Welcome everyone. Happy Monday. I'm the Gray Strega and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Monday, November 11th, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first two cards in our 5-card spread? You guys want to come out or what? Okay, thank you. Just hanging on the verge of the deck, just deciding whether they want to come out or not. We've got here our Page of Swords in combination with our Queen of Wands in its reversal. This is going to have a different impact on masculine and feminine today, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Now, not surprised to see energy like this right now. We are talking about processes of transformation. Transformation is the watchword of the day, watchword of the month to a certain extent. This is heavy. This is hard. It's difficult when we go through modalities like this. This observation, if you will, in recognizing and identifying and doing that work, it's frustrating, right? It's coming into that space of recognizing what is energetically frustrating you, all for the sake of being able to implement and add that place of change. Now, masculine and feminine energy deep within divine union right now. A lot of this work may be feeling energetically fundamental to a certain extent. And a lot of it even here, we're seeing even here, this may be creating energetic conflict even within divine union. Why are we seeing this to a certain extent? Because that ability of perceiving, right? That's creating a space or place of heightened sensitivity. Feminine energy, bearing in mind, not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. A lot of that sensitivity has to do with working through that sense or space of being seen, being felt, being heard, having a lot of that feeling of energetic frustration to a certain extent, working through that. And that articulation, we see even now, that's creating that space of frustration in feminine. Now, what do we see is happening right now with the counterpart energy? These are the energies that are giving each other what they need at this time. Masculine coming through more in that space of being energetically protective, right? We see a lot of that sense of conscientiousness to a certain extent, but working through that, doing that work, this is what is allowing that sense or that space of recognizing and identifying what feels energetically empowering. Now, masculine energy right now, we see even now, this is a lot of that masculine energy doing that work in terms of navigating the empathy, feeling the same frustrations of the feminine. What occurs when the feminine masculine is in that modality of feeling the sensitivity of the feminine, not taking it energetically personally, but embodying it to a certain degree. We see even now that a lot of that feeling, this is a lot of the masculine giving and lending feminine their energetic support, their energetic confidence. Feminine, for their part, being able to articulate their own frustrations. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy right now, deep within divine union, that ability of amplifying and articulating is paving the way for new communication, right? But it's all through the identification point of the energetic frustration, right? And this is what we're identifying is difficult right now for energy, even within divine union. It's not that everything is always smooth sailing, but it's being able to navigate those rough waters together, being able to articulate upon how one feels. And this is feminine energy not coming into a space of projecting that emotionality towards masculine, but almost trying to build a bridge to masculine in relationality to what they effectively need, right? What feels energetically helpful. Now, for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union, this is a lot of the energy deep within divine union, feeling the impact of the work of the energy coming into it. Because you will recall that for a lot of those connections right now, a lot of that energy coming into divine union, it has not been smooth sailing. We even recognize and identify that for a lot of that energy coming into divine union, navigating those spaces and places of frustration, even during those moments or modalities of recognizing what feels like it is conquerable, what feels like it is changeable. We see even now that for a lot of the energy doing that work, It's a recognition of still what needs to change, right? And we see for a lot of the energy here coming into divine union, this is all about that point of flux between the ability to articulate, that ability to mutually express the desire to change something versus the energetic ability to do so, right? I just see it even now. A lot of this energy coming into divine union, that ability of expressing forward to a certain extent, that ability of identifying what that work is. For feminine, I see even now, there's a lot of that feminine energy that's almost saying to masculine coming into divine union, that ability of being able to articulate upon something. I see the feminine almost saying, I don't want to feel like I'm constantly telling you something. I don't want to feel like I'm always the one that has to effectively say it, right? But what do we see that is happening now for masculine? We see that that's a lot of that masculine energy coming into divine union, that ability of identifying and recognizing the deeper frustrations of the feminine, right? Getting to the heart of that work. This is a lot of energy right now that is really working on being able to solve those problems. Why are we seeing that there's that ability to solve those problems? Because we see even now that this is the energy that is prioritizing how to heal those energetic connections. It's not easy work. Now, and a lot of this that we're also seeing here in relationality to feminine, this is a lot of the feminine energy. I see even now, this is a lot of the feminine energy not really even being in a space of wanting to articulate things. Like I see this to a huge degree. I just see that there's a lot of that feminine energy right now building into divine union that's trying to find the words to be able to articulate what that point of directionality is. So even here, so much of this is that's occurring. And I want to stress this. This feels like a lot of the energy outside of the partnership that's having an impact within. A lot of that, it feels very, I want to say it feels very tense. But that ability of identifying and recognizing it, I see even now the pathwork is becoming one of clear communication, of identifying and recognizing what feels energetically practical. Now, for a lot of this energy and separation here, a lot of this energy and separation right now, this is more of the same to a certain extent in relationality to the impact of outside energy on internal partnerships that are occurring in separation. Because I'm seeing even here that ability of doing so. I see a lot of energy of the feminine kind of being in this modality today of actively listening to a certain extent. I'm just seeing a lot of this here. A lot of the feminine energy being in that modality. Because a lot of these new connections that are occurring right now, I even recognize and identify that this has to do with feeling that sense of appreciation or articulating upon what those type of connections are going to be. And I see even now that a lot of that energy of the feminine right now towards masculine, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, is in that context in separation, wherein they're not being they're not being proactive in relationality to articulating upon their own manifestation goals. They're almost in that space or place of allowing the masculine to articulate it forward like first and foremost, to be able to navigate and recognize like what that path forward ahead looks like to a certain extent. Now, center card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got a lot of this energy here. 9 of Wands. This is a high sensitivity day, is what I'm seeing. I'm just seeing a lot of this heightened sensitivity today. I want everyone to be very conscientious of it. Because because this says to me, this type of energy that I'm seeing right now, it feels a lot like inadvertently stepping on toes to a certain extent. right? It's a lot of that energy that we're recognizing and identifying here of sore subjects, or working through something in such a way that I can see a lot of that volatility, right? Be very conscientious when you're talking to others today, because I just see even now that something about that sensitivity, it's creating a lot of work. It's making it hard to energetically communicate, because like, and I think it makes sense, because when we're seeing even here, like a lot of that delicacy has to do with partnership, or the energetic impact of partnership. And a lot of the energetic, we spoke even now a lot about the environment surrounding a lot of the counterparts trying to come into connection right now. It's like, it's giving me a lot of that like live wire energy to a certain extent. But the nice thing that we're appreciating is for the energy that's coming into divine union at this time, that feeling of being in alignment, that feeling of creating that sense of support. That's why we see so much of this masculine energy in its healed space, being very protective of the feminine. But what do we see that a lot of the masculine energy is doing at this time? The energy of the masculine that is being energetically protective of the feminine is doing so by actively listening. They're doing so by actively listening. They're doing so by being energetically attentive instead of being energetically prescriptive. And so we see even now, like a lot of that work of doing so, it's creating that path work of it's like opening up those channels of trust to a certain extent. Because that ability of being able to almost to hold space for one another, coming into, I see a lot of that healed masculine coming towards feminine to a certain extent, and saying like, guide the energetic way. Show me how to best move towards you in that way that feels most protective to you, right? And that sense of being conscientious in that way, I see even now, like that's what a lot of the energy deep within divine union is giving one another, right? Because it isn't, I keep getting, it's not prescriptive, it's patient, it's not argumentative, it's observational. And that sense or that space of navigating, right? Like it's almost like it's giving me a little bit of like it's giving me like a little bit of a library effect, right? It's giving me like a little bit of a library effect, because that sense or that space of being quiet, right? That quietude is like it's holding a lot of the energetic space for the feminine. So we see even now like there's a lot of that work that's happening, and it feels healing, but it's like the most, I want to say the most delicate type of healing to a certain extent. Now, fourth and fifth card in our 5-card spread, before we start getting clarification, these 2 cards just popping out today. We've got here, I'm not surprised to see it, Knight of Cups in combination with the 6 of Cups in its reversal. A lot of work being navigated right now, particularly in the pathwork of trust. A lot of work being facilitated right now around the pathwork of trust. And we identified this, like a lot of this that we're seeing right now. Masculine and feminine, deep within divine union. A lot of this work that we're seeing is building into that point of identification in relationality to what feels like something can change, what feels like something can heal, versus a lot of that space or place of recognizing and identifying where you may find someone. And for a lot of this energy deep within divine union, I'm seeing that this has a lot of that heightened sensitivity, particularly in relationality to relationships existing outside of partnership, right? This is a lot of that work I'm just seeing here. And I see even now that a lot of that ability of doing so, and I need to even say this right now, like I see a lot of that, like, I see a lot of this energy working through how to navigate frayed or difficult energetic connections outside of partnership right now. Because it says to me that there's a lot of that change that is potentially occurring right now in relationality to how something was being carried before versus how something is being carried now. We spoke a lot about that redistribution in relationality to empathy. And I see even now that a lot of that empathy, I mean, it's hard because I almost see a lot of energy deep within divine union having to work through what could be articulated as empathetic recall. Because I can almost hear some energy right now deep within divine union almost saying to one another, I don't know how to tell someone that they need to be able to be empathetic towards others. Like I can almost see that happening here. I can see someone struggling and saying, how do you educate or articulate to someone the level and degree of compassion and care is not something that should feel like one does so because you're in that modality of giving back what's being brought forth to you, right? There's a lot of this energy right now working through or facilitating into that pathwork within divine union. And I can just see the energetic frustration because it says to me that there's a lot of that pathwork that's occurring right now as it relates to the feeling of energetic perception in terms of the recognition of what one feels one should change versus what one feels is a positive. Like I can almost see some energy here, like almost coming into that space of trying to be energetically educational, but feeling a lot of that frustration. That's why we see even now so much of that work that is occurring here for the energy coming into divine union. I just keep seeing even now there's some energy coming into divine union that's having a massive change of perspective, like a massive change of perspective. And why are we seeing so much of that change of perspective? And this is, I want to say a lot of this change of perspective that I see is occurring right now has to potentially be on the part of masculine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. I can see even now like a lot of that masculine energy coming into divine union, almost looking at versions of past self. Looking at versions of past self that may have put and why are we seeing that? Because this is the energy that has changed their perspective. And when we change our perspective, what we effectively do is we prioritize different things. And when we prioritize different things, this is where inner child healing begins. Because there's that perspective of being able to look at the past self that did not carry the same priorities and identifying and recognizing, almost coming into that space. And I can see even now some of this being on the part of masculine, feeling like the gift that they're trying to give feminine as they come towards feminine is almost moving towards other masculine energy and almost articulating upon that emotionality. You know, almost coming into that space of trying to help another see that energetic perspective, because that's that expansion point that feels healing, right? So I can either see a lot of the energy right now coming into divine union, giving feminine energy clarity on something that they themselves don't understand and recognize that they're receiving from other masculine energy, or what we're identifying and recognizing at this time is a lot of this energy building into that context of seeing how far they've come because they recognize how they're navigating and addressing something in a different way, right? Now, for feminine energy coming into divine union at this time, you know, this is what I mean. Like, there's a lot of this energy right now of feminine just operating in that context. I want to say heavy observation today. I just see a lot of the feminine energy in this modality of heavy observation. Why do we see so much of this energy of the feminine right now in that sense of observation? I keep getting a lot of this energy of the feminine being like, I'm going into my library. Like, I'm going into my library. But the library is effectively the library of the self, right? Because we see even now that a lot of that energy of the feminine is working through communication or articulating upon what feels restorative, right? What feels energetically helpful as opposed to what they're effectively receiving, right? And so we see even now, like this is a lot of the feminine right now coming into divine union that's doing a lot of work in relationality to not being reactive, but more in that context of being contemplative, being able to articulate how they feel, being able to articulate what they feel, and potentially, I want to say, doing a lot of unpacking of energetic trauma right now. So this is the one, and this is why we have to be very sensitive in relationality to how we communicate today. Because what we're effectively seeing is masculine energy is doing a lot of inner child healing. Feminine energy is not doing inner child healing. Feminine energy is opening up old wounds to a certain extent. There's a lot of unpacking of trauma that is occurring here. So you can see that so much of this work that we're identifying right now, it feels like that sense or that space of being able to do that work right now. So much of that here, one part of it builds into the amplification of opening up old wounds, right? Masculine, though, in that space of inner child healing, this is more of the masculine energy going into that space of understanding and relationality to how far they've come. Now, for masculine and feminine energy in separation right now, this is why we're just identifying and articulating that a lot of this work that we're seeing at this time, it feels practical, but it also feels difficult because I see a lot of energetic connections that are happening right now in separation. And a lot of those energies are navigating sensitive subjects. And in the operation, the navigation of the sensitive subjects, being able to work through them to a certain extent, I see even here that ability of doing so, it feels energetically delicate. It feels like a lot of that work of unpacking. But even in that space of doing so, I see that a lot of this energy is coming into a space of identifying and recognizing what feels positive, what feels restorative, what creates that sense of hope, as opposed to working through a lot of that energy in the past, wherein, again, that sense or that space of not being energetically appreciated, not being able to be energetically seen. This is a lot of that delicacy that's effectively unfolding right now for the energy in separation, reaffirming their own energetic connections moving forward. Continuing to get clarification right now between our Page of Swords in its upright and our Queen of Wands in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Eight of Swords in its upright. So a lot of this, I want to say, a lot of this energetic sensitivity today. A lot of this energetic sensitivity. And it's difficult. It's prickly. I want to say the energy today, it feels very prickly because navigating forward in such a way, there's a lot of this work of the energy and separation that is recognizing and identifying and articulating upon a lot of those energetic limitations of the past, a lot of those energetic frustrations. I see a lot of the energy in separation right now, just unpacking or doing a lot of work in relationality to working through trauma. And a lot of that identification or that work of unlocking through trauma right now, I want to say it's even that it's like that space of like letting go to a certain extent, right? And that space of letting go, I'm seeing even now, it feels fortifying, right? It feels amplifying, but it also feels energetically frustrating. Now, masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union. A lot of this work that I'm seeing right now, this is why we describe so much of that energy that may have potentially fallen into separation last week. Because that observational point in how far one has come, right? That amplification of identifying what those changes are. I just see that a lot of that energy coming into divine union is articulating upon what they felt, like what they could not see before, but that they're working within the self on the process of changing. Now, for feminine and masculine, I'm seeing even now, there's a lot of that differentiation to a certain extent. Because for a lot of the masculine energy right now, this work that I'm seeing coming into divine union, it feels like building into that sensorless space of confidence. It feels like a lot of that energy coming into a space of being able to articulate emotionally in ways that they haven't before. And that ability of doing so, that's what I see even here. Like that's a lot of that work of potentially, and that's why I said even now being delicate of energetic triggers, because I just see even now like that ability of navigating an energetic trigger and being able to observe it and being able to find new ways to overcome it. That's what a lot of this work coming into divine union is doing at this time. And so even here, that ability of articulating and identifying and working through something in such a way that it allows for that context of adaptability. It allows for that ability of observing something in a different way. We see even now that a lot of that energy coming into divine union is navigating those new approaches. Now, for masculine and feminine energy, deep within divine union, a lot of this work deep within divine union right now, it feels very energetically protective. And I see that even now, a lot of that feeling of protectiveness, a lot of that amplification of protectiveness, this is what is articulating right now that like conversations in relationality to energy outside of partnership. Because that ability of doing so, recognizing and identifying something that one was able to energetically carry before that did not feel difficult, and now redistributing it to a certain extent. I just see even now that like a lot of this work of navigating energetic sensitivity, there's a lot of a volatility here, but a lot of that volatility is such that it is amplifying and articulating what feels like it can energetically change. And a lot of that work I see even now, like that's a lot of the energy within divine union, being very protective of one another as they navigate forward in that process. Continuing to get clarification between our Queen of Wands and its reversal in combination with our Nine of Wands and its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Two cards coming up to clarify right now. We've got here our Five of Wands in its reversal in combination with our Ten of Cups in its reversal. A lot of this, I want to say that a lot of the work that I'm seeing right now for energy deep within divine union has to do with navigating and articulating what feels energetically restorative. I just keep seeing that there's a lot of this energy deep within that context right now that is working through how to energetically heal something in such a way that it allows for that context of building forward in a place of positivity. And I see even now that for a lot of that energy in that way, like working through something here. The reason I see so much of this volatility that's effectively emerging to a certain extent is I see even now it has everything to do with manifestation goals. It has everything to do with the identification point of the manifestation goals. And so I see even now that a lot of the energy within divine union, feeling a lot of that energetic frustration in relationality to energy outside of the connection. And it has to do with whether there is that mutual feeling of alignment in relationality to what those manifestation goals are. And that's why I see even now, that's why I see a lot of that sensitivity that's emerging or evolving right now. Because I see even now like a lot of the feminine being in that modality of wanting to put energetic distance away from a circumstances or situations wherein they don't feel like they're in energetic alignment of manifestation goals with others around them at this time. I just kind of see, that's what I meant about a lot of that energy of the feminine almost coming into that space of being like, I'll be in my library. because that's a lot of the energy, like in of the feminine, that's basically in like, like working through that to a certain extent, because it feels observational, right? Like I can just see a lot of the feminine energy almost not wanting to come into that space of conflict with someone that they don't feel like they have the same manifestation goals with. While for masculine energy, I see a lot of the masculine being more in that space of being energetically protective in that zone. I see a lot of the energy of the masculine being more in that space of giving like having that perspective in relationality to how to navigate something. And this is the only thing I want to say right now, maybe creating, I told you, that heightened sensitivity. Because when we see cards like the Page of Swords and it's upright for masculine, and the Queen of Wands in its detriment or in its reversal, I can see like that's a lot of the masculine right now being more in that space of of wanting to be more assertive, if you will, like wanting to take more of a direct approach, whereas feminine's almost in that space of wanting to become more contemplative today. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, a lot of this energy is recognizing that how much their manifestation goals have changed. I'm just seeing this right now. There's some energy right now coming into divine union that has like an entirely different perspective on some stuff right now. And a lot of that energy coming into divine union, I want to say even now, feminine going through something that feels very triggering, working through that sense of being energetically protective of the self to a certain extent, because I see even now feminine is like in that modality of making energetic peace with things. Masculine taking more of a direct approach to stuff, right? Masculine moving more in that space right now of sharing the same manifestation goals with feminine. So that's why we see that in a way, the beauty that we're identifying here for the energy coming into divine union is these are the energies that are almost moving or acting as ideal energetic counterparts. Because we will point out that when we're navigating counterpart energy, it's not that you have to be in that space of being exactly the same at every moment, right? Like when one needs something, the other is able to rise to the challenge and vice versa. So we see even now, there's a lot of this energy here of the masculine that is feeling, I want to say, a lot of that vitality, if you will, today. A lot of that feeling of energetic protectiveness, but not just protectiveness of the self, if you will. I see a lot of that energy coming into divine union that is reprioritized what their manifestation goals are, specifically and particularly because for a lot of the energy right now coming into divine union, that space of building into a context or a concept wherein the feminine feels energetically safe, feels energetically protective. Like I feel like even now there's so much of this energy that's moving into alignment, if you will, because this is a lot of the masculine energy kind of like, I want to say like coming to I want to say this, like coming to energetically protect the feminine, but I want to say this isn't the masculine energy being energetically protective and moving in ways that the feminine does not aspire or desire. This is a lot of the masculine energy being in that space of being attentive to the feminine, right? And when we are protective of an energy, we don't facilitate for them. We're very attentive to them, right? So feminine right now, what is feminine doing coming into divine union? And even in the energy and separation, working on communication, right? And I see even now that for a lot of the feminine, that feeling of navigating through communication right now, it feels energetically difficult. For a lot of the masculine energy right now, that ability of being patient with feminine through that process, almost saying to feminine, take the time that you need. We move at your energetic speed. I'm not trying to facilitate what I desire. I'm in that space of being attentive to what you energetically need at this time. We see even now a lot of that energy almost moving into that space or place of catharsis. Even, and these are the new energetic connections that are happening here, because these are the energies that are encountering one another and healing each other, like finding each other deeply wounded and healing each other on the way. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Nine of Wands in its upright in combination with our Knight of Cups in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with the Hangman in its reversal. So a lot of this energy that I'm seeing right now, particularly in separation, and we've got to talk about this. There's been like, I'm sure, there's been a lot of this, like, I can't distress this, like, there's been this like anticipatory energy that we've been navigating for like about the last week now. It almost feels like that collective holding of the breath, if you will. And I see even now that a lot of that work that's happening in separation to a certain extent has to do with energetic balance. Like a lot of it, I see even now, there's like that redistribution that's happening right now as it relates to empathy. And it's hard. It's hard for me to read for this here too, because a lot of that, it feels a lot like a lot of energy right now, like withdrawing energetic compassion to a certain extent, or feeling that sense of energetic compassion that is hard to bring forward, right? Like I see that even here. And I want to say that a lot of that even now is, I want to say for a lot of energy and separation, I can see that there's a little bit of this like recalibration that's occurring to a certain extent. And it is having a different impact on masculine and feminine. Feminine, I see a lot of this feminine energy like pulling backwards right now. You know what I mean? Like almost moving into that space of not being as energetically, like, I want to say, like working through a lot of that frustration as it relates to trust right now. A lot of that feminine energy, feeling like there's a deep energetic trust wound that's forming right now. And I can see a lot of the masculine energy in separation, the healed masculine energy in separation that's also in that space of navigating and feeling that same energetic wound. Because I see even now a lot of that masculine almost being in that space of saying to feminine, and this is a lot of the energy coming into divine union right now, a wound to you is a wound to me because we are the same, right? Like this is a lot of that energy saying a wound to you is a wound to me because we are of the same. And so that energy even here, I recognize and identify coming forward in that way. That's why I see so much of that energy. The difficulty being, and this is what we need to talk about here, the sensitivity such of the masculine that's in that space of healing. Again, bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it is more aligned to. I can see a lot of the feminine was saying, again, I'm going into my library, and masculine being like, I'm going to guard the door. I'll be out here. I'm not going to bother you, but anything you need, but also I'll be out here if you need anything kind of energy. A lot of the energy deep within divine union right now, this is some deep unpacking is what I'm seeing. And that feeling, I want to say the difficulty that I'm seeing for some of the energy deep within divine union is navigating something energetically sensitive. Sometimes the only way to address something sensitive is to be able to energetically confront it. And so I see even now that a lot of that energy, being able to recognize and identify that, I feel like there's a lot of that deeper understanding or that context of not knowing something, but a lot of that unpacking being such that ability of doing so, it creates that sense of healing because it's the more robust recognition point of where someone has come from versus what they have effectively changed. So a lot of that work today, it's heavy stuff. It's like heavy lifting, but it's valuable and it's important. Continuing to get clarification between our Knight of Cups in combination with our Six of Cups in its reversal. Can I get one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with the card that we're going to be doing our class on later this week. We've got here our Chariot. You know, sometimes the only way to navigate something, sometimes the way to navigate something heavy is to confront it directly, right? And so I see even now a lot of that work that's occurring here for energy deep within divine union is articulating and navigating and recognizing deeper wounds, deeper trauma. Like there's a lot of this energy here I'm seeing within divine union that's just diving very deep today. But that ability of diving deep feels like it's bringing forth a lot of that understanding and a lot of that recognition. It feels heavy, but it feels fortifying. It feels empowering, right? Because it almost feels like that sense of being able to understand and navigate something all to the way of better energetically avoiding a trigger, if you will, or better avoiding an energetic sensitivity, right? Some wounds, right? We have to talk about this. Some wounds never get healed, right? Some wounds we carry within us, even to the best of our ability, we never necessarily fully heal from. But that act of love is being able to articulate upon what those are in order to facilitate and recognize and energetically redirect, so that way that in a way is what I see a lot of that healing coming forward today. While for the energy coming into divine union, this is an observation of how far you have come. Because we see even now that something that was navigated over the last week would have led to a pretty fundamental breakdown about 7 weeks ago. We were talking about that eclipse cycle to a certain extent. So if these are the energies that are putting forward new practices, new points of recognition, new places of productivity, it's not that they're doing it perfectly. This could be a lot of energy that's got notes for one another along the way, but seeing and recognizing the process itself is energetically reaffirming. While for a lot of the energy right now in separation, I'm seeing even now, this is like, the one thing I'm going to point out that may be very difficult right now for energy and separation is it feels to me like there's very little margin for error right now for a lot of the energy and separation, particularly in the direction of feminine. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. And, I want to bring this up because it was coming through very heavy in readings last week. And it has something to do with the way someone energetically carries something, right? And it speaks towards bringing levity to things. So there's that sense of energetic levity that you bring that feels like the healing of a wound. Like almost that sense or space of saying something that says, I am hurting too. Like this is something that we're energetically sharing together, right? And so I see even now that there's something that may be happening right now for energy and separation that's reaffirming in relationality to feeling the weight that someone is carrying, right? Feeling that weight. And then feeling that sense of someone saying, I'm carrying that weight too. I'm just trying to find a way to make it a little bit energetically easier. Versus energy that comes into that space of saying, you're being too energetically sensitive. I'm being don't take something so energetically personally. I see even now, I see some energetic connections moving forward because of how one is carrying something. And I can see something even now that if something feels like it's too light, if someone's like in that space of having a little bit of that, like that energetic like bounce to a certain extent, I almost see energy moving away from something and feeling very fundamental, feeling very validated, because it doesn't feel like a time to becoming into a space of being, like, I want to say, taking something, when something hurts energetically across something, moving into that space of speaking, like I can almost see like moving into that space of, of lightness. Like I just see even now there's a lot of that shifting as it relates to like friendship, energy coming, like in terms of like manifestation goals. Like this is having like a deeper impact right now, like in many, many different ways. And a lot of this is feeling, like I said, doors opening and other doors like fundamentally closing as a result. Continuing to get clarification between our Eight of Swords, our Ten of Cups, and our Five of Wands in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now. We've got double 10 cards out today. Now you'll recall our reading, we ended last week's reading with triple sevens. We had triple sevens out. We had 3 different 7 cards, and then the final 2 cards that we pulled were a 3 and a 4. So we already had another 7 there as well. There's a lot of redistribution that's happening right now in relationality to how to carry something. And that feeling of frustration, that feeling of exhaustion. For a lot of the energy in separation, I see that this is the affirmation of moving away from the past into the present. And a lot of this, even here, has to do with the observation or the navigation in recollecting something from the past in such a way of, I want to say, like there's a lot of energy in separation right now that is unpacking the past in the present to recognize like what that pathwork is going forward. And they're saying to me, like, the simplest things feel energetically harder today. But the reason that the simplest things feel energetically harder today is a lot of the energy is keeping themselves focused on what feels like it is grounding, keeping their focus on what feels like it is built upon that pathwork of purpose. Now, feminine energy right now, there's a lot of this work that I see that feels like things are slowing down. Like I can see a lot of this feminine energy like slowing things down, if you will, in separation. But why do we see a lot of the feminine energy slowing things down in energetic separation? Because a lot of the feminine energy is utilizing that capacity of trust. When there's a trust wound, the only thing that heals trust is time. And so for a lot of that energy right now, the feminine recognizing and identifying, healing, actively healing a trust wound, feeling that affirmation in the process of what feels possible to heal versus what feels like one is letting go of. And so I see even now, that's why a lot of this energy of the feminine is moving in such a way that it feels less empathic, if you will, because the energy of the feminine is feeling less compassionate to something that feels like it isn't adaptable, right? Because especially if this is the feminine that has to work so much on that space of adaptability, actively working in that pathwork of transformation. This is a lot of the energy that's almost saying to masculine in separation that ability of being adaptable is a gift. That is the gift we give one another, right? So we see even now, there's a lot of the energy of the feminine that is assessing what feels like it is changing, right? What feels like there is progress being made versus what feels like it never energetically changes. And so that's what's so difficult about the energy today. Like these 2 cards in combination, that's some heavy stuff. Now, masculine energy, I see that masculine is also feeling that too in separation right now. And that feeling or that space moving towards feminine and saying, I also feel I share this burden with you because it isn't your burden, it is ours. Like there's a lot of that energy that almost comes towards feminine right now, is almost articulating and staying to the feminine. What is it that you need at this time? How can I be energetically supportive? Because we see that that's a lot of the masculine almost coming towards feminine in such a way and feeling a lot of that shared empathy. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, I see a lot of energy of masculine coming towards feminine by means of, I want to say, apology. But I need to stress this. The reason that we see that this is occurring right now for a lot of the energy is because we saw that for a lot of this energy coming into divine union, that ability of articulating and talking about what that work was, really recognizing and identifying, like sharing mutual priorities and moving on that pathwork of doing so. This is a lot of the masculine that's articulating that sense, because there's a lot of the masculine energy here that is in the process of changing, right? And when we're in the process of energetically changing, it is very atypical that we can become apologetic for past versions of self, because we look back upon that past version of self and we articulate and identify that there's a difference, right? And I can see a lot of that. I can see a lot of that masculine energy almost like coming into that space of looking at the past version of self and saying like, yeah, that person was rougher around the edges because they had different values, because they had different priorities. So there's a lot of this energy here of masculine coming towards feminine right now. That ability and that gift to express, the security in being able to articulate upon that emotional expression. I see even now like that is a lot of that energy that is lending perspective to things, specifically and particularly because I want to say even now, there's a lot of this energy that is seeing and experiencing something outside of the self that is re-amplifying their own commitment in the commitment that they're building together, right? Like there's something of that moment I see here of someone saying that that point of value is occurring specifically as a result of perspective and relationality to the gift of being in partnership and identifying that sense of being able to be adaptable and changing while fortifying the commitment of not necessarily being perfect, but continually working in that pathwork of progress and trying. While for masculine and feminine energy, that is deep within divine union, a lot of this energy that I'm seeing deep within divine union, this is some heavy trauma work here. This is a lot of speaking towards something in a way, navigating sensitivities. And that point, and that this very similar to what we see for the energy coming into divine union right now, that ability of being sensitive, be mindful of each other's triggers today. And make sure that you're giving someone clarification if they navigate a trigger, what effectively energetically triggered you. Because I see even now that ability of doing so, it's heavy, but it also feels like the energetic, like closing out of a cycle that allows for a new cycle to begin, right? Like I just see it even here, because a lot of that is almost, I see masculine coming towards feminine and saying, let me carry that for you. You don't have to energetically carry that alone. Continuing to get clarification between our 5 of Wands in its reversal in combination with our 10 of Cups in its reversal, in combination with our Hangman in its upright. Those are heavy cards together. Center card for today's read is 7 of Cups, right? I see even now, and this is what feels like it's amplifying for a lot of that energy coming into divine union at this moment, because that observation, that ability to articulate, if you will, and saying to one another. I want to say that a lot of the energy within divine union is, why is this energy pulling out things from the past and reassessing it? Because this is the energy that says you don't have to carry that anymore by yourself. You're not in a modality that you have to carry that alone. I can carry that for you. And so we see even now, and there's more of that 7 energy coming back to the surface. We start having a lot of these 7s popping up again, because this is a revisitation of some of that work that we were seeing on Thursday. But that ability of doing so, recognizing and identifying the reason we unpack a wound, the reason we address something deep from the past, is because if you're within divine union and you've been carrying it for so long, that ability of recognizing that you don't have to carry it alone, there's a lot of that energy that feels like it's supportive because it's in that state of doing so. It creates that easement. Now, for masculine and feminine coming into divine union right now, the ability to merge as it relates to the manifestation goals. I see even now, this is why there's so much of that characteristic difference that's occurring, because for a lot of this energy coming into divine union right now, that feeling of not doing it alone, doing it energetically together, this is what's creating that space of taking new approaches. Because this is the energy that's healing from the trauma of the past, because they're no longer experiencing something from the perspective of solely the self, but rather being in that space of reprioritizing. It's giving all of that clarity. It's giving all of that new perspective. And that ability of doing so, I just see new ideas, new plans of action. And this is a lot of that energy that almost articulates and apologizes to one another. But I see even now the energy saying no apology is necessary, because if you're apologizing for something that you're doing, you're just putting a qualifier on how well you're doing it. And this is a lot of the energy in separation that may be feeling that same space as they build new connections in separation. Because a lot of that energy, identifying and recognizing the weight from which someone is carrying something, is saying to someone, I'm seeing everything I need to see. And they're saying a lot of that ability of doing so is the recognition of the weight of the energetic priority. This is what's creating so much of that shift right now in separation, because I see even now there's a lot of that focus of determination that's occurring right now that's adding a lot of gravity to circumstances in separation. Right? And so it's making it harder to move forward, but it feels a lot more energetically serious in the process, continuing to get clarification between our hangman in combination with our chariot card in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our world card in its reversal. Like I said, there's a lot of this work right now that's happening in relationality to, I want to say, it feels like everything is in like some kind of energetic pause at this moment. It feels like a lot of this expectation, or someone energetically holding their breath to a certain extent. And I see even now like a lot of that work in separation. I see a lot of that energy building into that context of moving forward to a certain degree. But it feels harder. It feels heavier, because it feels like it's carrying the weight of a deepened sense of purpose. Even if in separation, like nothing is being taken lightly here. There's no lightness, like there's no room for energetic lightness is what I'm seeing, right? So even here, and I see even now, like I can see a lot of that space of, and this is what I meant about like that sensitivity point, that sense or that space of someone carrying something energetically lightly. Like almost that in itself being a moment of someone looking and saying, this isn't energetically possible right now because of the gravity at which I find you. Like I said, because of the gravity at which I find you right now. Masculine and feminine coming into divine union right now. This feels to me like a lot of that energy coming into divine union at this time. This is that reaffirmation, if you will. I just see it even now. Like a lot of that energy navigating something in a different way that's changing their own energetic perspective. And for a lot of that energy coming into divine union, this doesn't change the directionality that you're moving towards. I see, if anything right now, a lot of that work, the reason it feels fundamental is because this is the energy, like this ability of doing so, or this prioritization, or this sense of like, really, I see a lot of energy right now coming into divine union, giving each other the gift of clarity, giving each other the gift of clarity in an unclear situation is almost like the highest gift that can be given at this time. So I just see even now a lot of that energy potentially coming into divine union, saying like, I don't know much. I don't know what's going on outside of us, but I know the direction we're headed in. And that hasn't changed. And that's very much in alignment right now with the energy deep within divine union. The difficulty that I'm seeing for a lot of the energy deep within divine union right now has to do with a lot of that feeling, I want to say, trying to be empathetic or empathic towards energy that feels like they're not moving towards the same directionality as the self. Like I'm just seeing this even now. Like there's a lot of, I want to say there's a lot of there's a lot of conversation I see is occurring right now in relationality to manifestation goals. And I almost see that for a lot of the energy deep within divine union right now, that ability of being adaptable towards others' manifestation goals, like this is what is so difficult right now. You know, like a lot of that work of trying to heal in such a way, it feels frustrating, because this is a lot of that observation in relationality to what one feels you can help someone understand and recognize versus another's downright resistance in relationality to what they want to change within the self. You know, I'm just seeing even now, like there's a lot of that frustration right now deep within divine union in relationality to energetic equivalent that feels like it is non-expansive or non-yielding to a certain extent. You know, like that's what's so difficult about this. Like a lot of it feels very much like that sense of being frustrated on something that is just rigid for the sake of being energetically rigid. Continuing to get clarification between our 10 of Wands in its upright in combination with our 7 of Cups in its upright. Oh, one card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Devil in its reversal. So there's healing. There's definitely healing that is coming through right now. There's definitely healing here. But the thing with the healing that we're seeing has to do with, the best way to describe this is taking new approaches in relationality to how that healing energetically occurs to a certain extent. And we see it even now that for a lot of that energy, deep within divine union, that ability of recognizing and identifying and wanting to bring positivity to circumstances in certain situations. This is an energy that is losing hope in that way, right? What happens when you're navigating from that capacity of love? Love will allow you to take any energetic approach that you need to. Like love creates that space where you're able to recognize and understand and make those necessary changes to a certain extent. And so we see even now that a lot of that work that is being facilitated there, this sense or that space of being energetically adaptable. This is the gift that the counterparts are creating and providing for one another. Because we see even there that conscientiousness, that sense of care and support, they're also saying to me, the recognition that the healing that we need ourselves may not necessarily be the healing that the counterpart needs. And that's why we were talking a lot about that sense today of the heightened sensitivity that comes from the power of energetic observation. Because when we're observant of something, instead of prescriptive to it, we're able to recognize and identify what feels like it is energetically helpful versus what feels like it's energetically harmful, right? We've talked a lot about this right now. It's hard energy because, again, a lot of that work that we see, particularly during the Scorpio cycle, has to do with that conversation related around the sense of taking poison and turning it into an antidote, right? Like and it all has to do with the place and the space that you energetically put something, right? Something that is harmful can be very healing, depending on the circumstances and situations. So I see even now that a lot of that sensitivity and relationality to placement, being able to find positive places to take something that may have felt like it was energetically harmful in the past. This is a lot of that energy that's doing the work on the self, by not feeling the need to just close down a part of the self or just move away from something, but finding new approaches to doing something in ways that feels like it amplifies what one is it takes a negative and turns it into an energetic positive, right? While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union, very much pretty much the same conversation. But the thing is, that's the energy that's already been doing that work. So it feels more like a moment of appreciation. Now, what's hard about this, it feels like a lot of the energy deep within divine union is now starting a lot of the work that the energy that's coming into divine union was doing about 7 weeks ago. Because I told you these lessons, they move up and down the frequencies. So a lot of this energy right now for the energy deep within divine union, navigating that is very similar to what we saw the energy coming into divine union was navigating about 7 weeks ago. Now for masculine and feminine energy right now, coming in separation, the thing that I see that's happening right now for a lot of the energy in separation, it's not that this is changing one's own course, right? It's not changing someone's own direction. It's just bringing authenticity to things a lot more quickly. Like there's a lot of this energy right now. It feels like there's suddenly this like massive vetting process that is occurring right now for energy and separation. And that ability of doing so, like working through that energetic vetting process to a certain extent, like I just kind of see that that's happening here, wherein like a lot of this energy in separation is being very protective of their energy and being very sensitive in relationality to where they put it forth. Continuing to get clarification between our 7 of Cups in its upright in combination with our World card in its reversal. Can I please get one card to clarify? Woo! There it is. There's confirmation right there of what I just said. We got here our Fool card in its reversal. So for, again, a lot of the energy in separation, I see a lot of intentionality as it relates to proceeding forward. Things feel like they've slowed down in separation. Like everybody's moving slower right now. But it feels like a lot of that slowness, I just keep saying there's something here that's coming through very heavy in separation, which is if you're moving in a direction, if you got intentionality and you're moving in a certain direction, then moving slower in that directionality isn't going to feel energetically frustrating, right? I just see it. It doesn't feel like it's going to be energetically frustrating because I just keep kind of seeing that for a lot of that energy, facilitating forward in that way, it creates this state or space wherein the energy is just being a lot more conscientious, right? Like this is high conscientiousness, that higher consciousness, it has high conscientiousness. higher, like that, higher consciousness has higher conscientiousness. So I see even now that a lot of that energy in separation is being highly conscientious, both in building forward in such a way that they're saying that there is like a lot of those hard conversations that are coming forward right now in separation. It's like the type of hard conversation that you might have waited later to have as it relates to building an energetic connection. I see a lot of that energy just saying like, no, we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off now. We're just going to do that now. We're going to unpack that now. We're not going to wait. We're going to do it at this moment. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union, a lot of this work that I'm identifying and recognizing has to do with the value and power of recognizing how far you have energetically come. Because a lot of this energy put themselves on that pathwork of healing about 7 weeks ago, again, during that eclipse process. And I'm just seeing that for a lot of that energy, this is the energy that says, we're not perfect, but we're improving. It's not that everything is like 100%, but that ability of seeing that something is getting easier or something is being navigated better is validation in relation to how far one has come. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, in separate and like deep within divine union, this is the energy that is carrying things for one another. And there's a lot of this deep unpacking that's occurring here. There's a lot of this work I see that is being facilitated in relationality to having a lot of those deep energetic conversations of the past, unpacking really old wounds, unpacking really old traumas, but for the sake of recognizing that when you're moving in partnership, you don't have to carry something alone in the process. Final card for today's reading, between our Devil card in its reversal in combination with our Fool card in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. I like it. We've got here 3 of our 10 cards out today. This feels productive. I know a lot of these cards feel very energetically heavy right now, but this is important. This is important that we're landing today on this 10 of Pentacles in its upright, because it feels to me like navigating something, bringing something difficult to the surface today and finding something productive to do with it. There's a lot of that work there. That is the identification thing, that everything has its place, right? And sometimes the best thing we can do when we're navigating something difficult is finding something productive to do with it. So we see even now that a lot of that sense of prioritization and purpose, it feels like a relief and a release, because this is the energy that's not trying to change the circumstances outside the self fundamentally. They're trying to move into those modalities that it feels that the self is comfortable in the process, right? Now, for masculine and feminine energy right now, in separation, this is why I see a lot of that energy slowing down processes. I'm just seeing even now a lot of that energy slowing down processes right now. Why is the energy in separation slowing down processes as it relates to coming into partnership? Because this is a lot of that energy that's almost articulating and saying to one another that if we're moving in the same energetic direction, there doesn't need to be expedience, right? There doesn't need to be expedience there, right? Because that's the energy that doesn't feel the need to get somewhere. That's the energy that enjoys where they are. Right? So a lot of that feeling of energetic community right now, and a lot of building into that space. I see even now a lot of that energy articulating that manifestation goal, remembering that a manifestation goal is something that we aspire to, but something that we embody, right? We don't articulate the change we're going to make. We become the change. We become the force that we desire to change into. So I see even now a lot of that energy being very tangible, working on that manifestation, but focusing on the manifestation that is amplifying, building into the context of what one can do in the present that brings you closer to the long-term manifestation goal, right? While for masculine, and it does feel like a lot of that practicality that is occurring here, right? A lot of that energy moving out of aspiration and into practicality today, but it feels energetically positive. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, there's a little bit of this sense of energetic accomplishment that I'm potentially seeing right now for the energy coming into divine union, because this is the energy that put themselves on that pathwork of healing, and they're seeing and feeling the energetic results of that work in relationality to what they're building between the self. And even here, I see that ability of doing so, the amplification of the difficulty or the frustrations outside the self, it doesn't feel like it's moving them off that pathwork. It just feels like it's creating even more prioritization of that work, because that's the energy that effectively amplifies and articulates that sense or that space of creating the energetic ideal between the self that they aspire to experience outside of the self. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is deep within divine union, a lot of this energy deep within divine union, I just see even now, like, and it feels like navigating frustration. It feels like working through that space or place of taking energetic frustration out on each other, right? Because when we care about one another, it is typical, or it is possible, that we sometimes come into that space of taking energetic frustrations out on one another. But that state or that space, I see even now, of being able to navigate potentially oversensitivity that leads to a lot of energetic unpacking, if you will. I see even now, like, it's almost that space of building into even stronger integrity as it relates to energetic connections, specifically and particularly because it feels like that sense or space of coming into deeper alignment today. But you have to kind of you have to do some of that. Like, I want to say today's like one of those days. It's like weeding, you know what I mean? Like, you got to kind of go deep and pull into the roots of something in order to get a better sense of what it is that you're creating in the present. Final card for today's spread is, we've got here our 9 of Pentacles in its reversal. This is heavy work right now. We're just recognizing and identifying this. There's a lot of this energy that I'm seeing at this time that is navigating through those energetic frustrations, navigating through a lot of that path work. And that's the difficulty. And unfortunately, this is what occurs in those modalities of love. Like, when we're in that space of caring, like we just articulated this, sometimes it's those moments that we bring up the hardest parts of ourselves that the counterpart effectively navigates, right? This is always that space or place that we speak towards, which is the context that when we care about someone, sometimes we see those parts of the self that we show to them, and we also receive from them, that are not necessarily as energetically easy, or are not necessarily as energetically pleasant, right? But a lot of this work that we're seeing to a certain extent, even here, it's allowing, this is the type of work I would expect to see at the heart of Scorpio season. Which is really, it's not just navigating what feels easy. It's going into the weeds. It's navigating into the darkest parts of the self. Because when you do so, and you do so with intentionality, you recognize that there's no part of the self that isn't perfect. There are just the parts of ourselves that we find less appealing, more shameful, harder to navigate. And so what is the energy doing right now that's trying to work into divine union? They're marching into those spaces within the self and towards the other with a flashlight. Like they're like, it's okay. Our love will be our flashlight, right? Like that is a lot of that energy here. Now, for the energy deep within divine union, this is like a lot of the work that we saw a few weeks ago that the energy coming into divine union was navigating. Unintentional triggers, working through a frustration, taking that energy out on one another, being able to navigate some of that prickliness. It takes a little bit of fine tuning. It's a lot of fine tuning that we're seeing here. Masculine and feminine coming into divine union right now, there's a little bit of this energy that is feeling the impact around them outside of the partnership, and it's building an even heightened sense of purpose in the work that they're doing within it. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, this sense of navigating energetic terrain has changed. The sense of what one is tolerable towards versus intolerant of has changed in some rapid way. And I see even now, like there's very little space here in separation. If this was something that didn't bother someone before, I see even now, like I see someone being like that sensitivity is such that I can almost see someone being like, no, I'm going to take that molehill and I'm going to make it a mountain because the sensitivity is so high today. So just again, working on volatility, make sure that you're moving with intention today. If you feel triggered, make sure that you articulate upon the trigger, because I see even now, like very little margin for error is what I'm getting for a lot of the energy and separation. Right, a lot of that being like I can see it even like it's like hair trigger kind of energy in relationality to navigating a sensitivity and being being empathetic in the process. That is where we find all of the energy prior to beginning today. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and receiving it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. Please keep in mind, if you book a private reading with me, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website. Also, a couple of updates before we get started on our personal readings today. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who attended my recent tarot class. Our next tarot class will be held on this Wednesday, November 13th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will be continuing our studies into the tarot with a focus on the Chariot card. If you would like to become a part of our class program, all you need to do is head over to my Substack, graystrega.substack.com. Your paid subscription to my Substack will grant you access and entry into our live class each and every month. You will also have access to the full repository and course materials of our previous classes. So if you're just joining us, you've got ample you don't have potentially time to catch up for our next class, but I'll be giving recaps in each class and how far we've come, and then you'll have a full month to be able to catch up at your own leisure on those other cards that we've explored thus far. You'll also have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions that you may have in relation to anything that we've learned thus far. And if you become a founding member to my Substack, not only will you receive a discount on the full year's worth of classes, but you will also receive a complimentary one-on-one mentorship class with me, wherein we will assess where you are on your own personal tarot journey. I'll give you the best insights in terms of how to utilize those classes most effectively moving forward. One of the things I tried to do in these classes was make them accessible to the absolute novice tarot reader as well as the seasoned reader. There's certainly something there for everyone. And also, if you are a paid subscriber to my TikTok, please make sure that you head over to our subscriber-only Discord channel. There you will find a special coupon code that will give you an additional discount on your subscription to the Substack. Even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my Substack, I would encourage you to follow me there to stay up to date on any new offerings and services. I also post there my daily collective reads podcast, so you'll be able to see the full spread because I post a photo there as well. You'll also have updates to our giveaways. Speaking of giveaways, we are in the process of holding our November giveaway. If you would like to potentially win a free private tarot reading with me, simply head over to the link tree in my bio. There is a 2-minute travel survey there. Filling out that travel survey will grant you an entry into the giveaway. But if you would like to increase your chances of winning, go ahead and forward that survey to a friend, because when I pull the winner, I'll be gifting a reading not only to the person that wins, but also to the person who referred you to the giveaway. Finally, I want to let you guys know that on top of my standard life path readings, I offer mentorship classes. These are focused on whatever area or course of study you are most interested in learning about. They're for my clients that are seeking a more personalized educational experience with me. Those can be purchased on an individual level or as a monthly class series. That is 4 45-minute classes, weekly or bi-weekly, as your schedule permits. Also, for my clients that are seeking more consistent weekly tarot support, I'm very happy to offer weekly tarot insight packages. That is a package of 4 30-minute readings, weekly or bi-weekly, as your schedule permits, so that you can stay more consistent on your personal journey. I want to thank you guys so much for today for being here and receiving these messages, and we will do this again tomorrow.